Alright, good evening everyone. Welcome to Compound Interesting. This is Emil, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Bitcoin. Before I get going, just show you where I am. I'm just in Tenerife here. Unfortunately the weather's pretty parsnip, so it's actually a storm today. So that's why obviously I haven't released a video in a couple of weeks, so sorry about that. But yeah, I thought I could bring it to you today. Let's try and get the nice view out there. I was going to do the video outside, but obviously there's a storm today, so that's what you get sometimes. So in today's video we're going to be talking about Bitcoin, and sorry if the audio or video isn't as good as normal. Obviously that's just because I'm away, so be back to normal very soon. But yeah, let's talk about Bitcoin and its meteoric rise over the last few weeks, and whether or not I would be buying at these prices personally, and whether or not I'm recommending to my friends to be buying at these prices. So first of all, I'd like to congratulate anyone who's invested in Bitcoin, who listened to me over the last year or so. I told you to invest at 8, 10, 12, and even I disclosed that I was investing into Bitcoin at 20k. I was taking all the last of my savings and putting it into Bitcoin at 20k, because the investment thesis had been confirmed and was starting to play out. So that's why I was like, I had a rule when I started investing, or over the last few years when I was investing in Bitcoin, that I'd never buy Bitcoin above 10k. And then I kind of changed the rule as new information came and more of the investment thesis got confirmed. So when all the billionaires started shilling Bitcoin, or not shilling Bitcoin, but starting to understand Bitcoin and agreeing with the investment philosophy, that's when Bitcoin's value actually went up, not when the price went up. Well, the price going up also increases the value because of network effects, etc. But also when billionaires start to endorse Bitcoin, when institutions start to endorse Bitcoin, that kind of shows that Bitcoin has a place in the investment community. So that's why I put every last penny that I had into Bitcoin when I was still under 20k. So like when I was around 20k actually, so like between 19 and 22, even though that was the all-time high and it had gone on such a crazy run for 2 months. The confirmation of the investment thesis over the last couple of months at that time allowed me to believe in myself to buy more Bitcoin at those prices. And has the investment thesis changed since that point, since it's gone from 20k to 35k? So let's talk about that. So the move from about 10k, let's say about 10k up to 20k, that was mostly driven by institutional investors. So large companies, billionaires, smart investing money drove the price from $10,000 to $20,000. It wasn't in the news really. It wasn't on Twitter like by retail investor newbies. It wasn't your friends talking to you about Bitcoin really. It wasn't your granny talking to you about Bitcoin. However, this move from 20,000 to 30,000, that's mostly being retail, or significantly pushed by retail investors. And that's because like institutions were mostly closed over Christmas and everyone met their families over Christmas. And anyone who was invested in Bitcoin was talking to their families about Bitcoin over Christmas, which led all those newbies to come on board. Look how much money I've made over with Bitcoin over the last year. It's tripled, it's quadrupled or whatever. And that brings more retail newbie investors in, and that's what's really driven the price up since Christmas. So what about at 30k? Is that a good investment right now? Well, I'm kind of on the fence about this, to be honest, and I would say it depends. So personally, I think Bitcoin is going to go anywhere from like a 3x to a 10x from here in the next year. So that's what I personally think is the most likely scenario. But obviously it might not go anywhere. It might go to zero, or it might, I'll explain later on in the video a reason why it could go even way higher than that in the next year. But moving on, the most likely scenario for me, and if I had no money whatsoever invested into Bitcoin, I still think $30,000 is, like, just because you're not early, or you're not earlier than me buying Bitcoin, or you're not earlier than the Winklevoss twins or the Winklevi twins buying Bitcoin, doesn't mean you're late. I still believe you're early if you're investing into Bitcoin now. It's still a tiny amount of user adoption across the world. It's still in the early adopter phase of the S-curve. So I'll probably bring up a photo of the S-curve adoption rate for you now, but we can see we're like, I think like 2%, let's say 2 to 5, less than 5% anyway, of people in the world own Bitcoin right now. So we're still in pretty much the early adopter phase of the S-curve adoption rate. So once the early majority and late majority, that huge huge wave of investors and people start using Bitcoin, that's when that could lead to enormous price increases. And I think that we're on the cusp of that, and that's one of the reasons in another video that I explained where a few people think that this might be a super cycle for Bitcoin. I brought out this video talking about this super cycle for Bitcoin. Well, I didn't call it a super cycle, I just said that Bitcoin could go to 700,000 this cycle, and I mentioned this S-curve adoption rate and the fact that Bitcoin's investment case just got enormously magnified because of the Rona and all this money printing. Everyone's looking for a store of value place that's not controlled by governments, that's completely separated. It really increases the value of the Bitcoin network. So this is one reason that Bitcoin could have this super cycle, and a few other big crypto YouTubers like Sonny Decree and Dan Held started talking about that. So I was kind of happy to maybe have inspired those videos. Maybe I should just finish up on this super cycle scenario, which could potentially happen, which could bring Bitcoin from 30,000 to anywhere from like 700, 800, even a million in the next year. The other clue that this could be happening is that the growth of Bitcoin, since it broke the all-time high in comparison to previous cycles, it's actually climbing faster than it did in previous cycles, which is kind of counterintuitive to what you might expect. Like usually the growth for the last couple of cycles, it grew really fast, then it grew a little bit slower, and people are expecting it's going to grow a little bit slower this time and not make such a large move. Mightn't do 100x in this cycle, it might just do a 10x in this cycle, and the first cycle it did 1000x or whatever. But this cycle is starting to look actually pretty fast and pretty parabolic already. So that might be a clue that if this parabolic move, or if it keeps climbing at these kind of rates, we could see a much higher Bitcoin price than most people are predicting. So if you're investing in Bitcoin now, there is that small chance. I still think that's a smaller chance, this super cycle scenario, than the normal scenario. But let's say it's a 5% chance that this super cycle scenario happens this year, where Bitcoin goes from 30,000 to, I estimated, 700,000 in this cycle. Let's say that's a 5% chance. So you're buying into that small chance, maybe 5-10% chance. But let's talk about the more likely scenario, the one that most people have been predicting for the last few years, which would bring Bitcoin's price, which I think is the most likely scenario, to between 100 and 300,000 or thereabouts. So about a 3 to 10x from here. So obviously none of this is investment advice, but it's just what I think is the most likely scenario, and I'm just going YouTube with no real credentials to my name. So I've made a couple of good calls in the past, but that doesn't mean I'm the world's greatest investor. So don't listen to me, do your own research, etc. But I think the most likely scenario, let's put it at a greater than 50% likelihood that Bitcoin gets to those kind of $100,000 to $300,000 prices within 1 year. And I think the risk is relatively, well, it depends what you define by risk. So if you're worried that if you buy in now, say you buy at 30,000, and you'd be shooting yourself in the foot if Bitcoin dropped from 30,000 to 20,000, or did some sort of 30-40% crash just after you bought in. But if you're worried about that kind of thing, then Bitcoin is definitely not for you, because that happens all the time, and I really think that could happen at any minute and will happen at any minute. But it does do those kind of crashes during bull runs, but quickly rebounds. So even if you buy in at a local top and it crashes, and I do not think we're at the top for Bitcoin, I don't think we're anywhere near the top for Bitcoin in this cycle. I think we're just getting started really, because there's another 5 to 10x to go, in my opinion. But it could crash tomorrow just after you buy in, but I think it would quickly recover and take out the previous prices where you bought in if you're buying now at 30,000. So a crash to 20-30% could be an even better buying opportunity for someone who, if they were to invest in Bitcoin at these prices. But you have to be prepared for serious volatility when you're getting into Bitcoin, especially after such parabolic rises. Like I don't think we've seen these kind of rises, definitely not since at least 2017. So this is an enormous rise, so just be prepared. Be very prepared for the Bitcoin roller coaster if you're thinking about getting on. So if I had no Bitcoin, I would personally, I would definitely be buying Bitcoin right now. Even I still don't think there's a better risk to reward investment in the stock market or in any other asset right now, in my opinion. As far as I'm aware, there probably is much better investment opportunities out there. Well, maybe some other good investment opportunities right now, seeing as Bitcoin has done extraordinarily well recently, are actually altcoins. So coins that aren't Bitcoin, like Ethereum, Chainlink. I'll probably have to bring out another altcoin video, but I'll link you to my last one there. But my top altcoins are, my favorite ones are like Chainlink, Ethereum, and the DeFi coins look really interesting at the moment. So like Aave, YFI, Synthetics. Anyway, don't just go buying those altcoins because I've bought them. But if you're already a big Bitcoin investor, maybe you could start looking into the altcoins a bit, because Bitcoin has already done really well, taking out its all-time highs, and all the altcoins are quite low in comparisons to Bitcoin. So they're nowhere near their all-time highs in comparisons to Bitcoin at all. So there's potentially more potential for the altcoins right now. But if you're just a complete noob, don't be buying altcoins, just buy Bitcoin. Definitely start out with Bitcoin. It's risky enough by itself. So, but the reason I don't think if you're willing to hold Bitcoin for at least 1 year or six months to 18 months, I don't think there's enormous risk for Bitcoin, because in the most likely scenario, in my opinion, there's always that 10%, 20% probability that something happens with Bitcoin, it crashes to zero, or it just becomes not so useful. But in my eyes, that's like a 5% probability, but I don't think it's a very high probability at all. But a lot of people think it is a high probability. I think it's pretty close to 0% probability, but I'm completely biased. Bitcoin is my largest investment, so just take that with a complete grain of salt. But basically what I mean is the risk is quite low, because in the most likely scenario, Bitcoin goes up to, let's say, 100K, 200K, 250K or whatever, and then it crashes, and I don't think it will crash to a lower amount than 30,000. So even if you're buying now, I still think in 1 year's time, you will have, your Bitcoin will be worth more, even at the very end of the crash, in my opinion. So that's why I think the risk to reward is still enormous with Bitcoin, even after this unbelievable run it's gone through. So if you were to invest, just be ready for those big crashes and get strong hands. You need really strong hands if you're getting into cryptocurrency. And don't just be buying Bitcoin for 1 year or 18 months trying to get the next cycle, make it like a 5x or 10x. Just imagine where Bitcoin could be in 10, 20 or 30 years. Me personally, during the next crypto bull run, like during the last crypto bull run, I didn't take any profits whatsoever, and obviously enormously regretted that, because I saw my small net worth at the time go to double, triple, like just went completely ham. All my altcoins were going absolutely crazy. I made so much money on paper and then lost so much money on paper. It's not even funny. Like, it is actually hilarious. I made an enormous amount of money and then lost 99% in the altcoins. So yeah, definitely with the altcoins, in the next bull run, I'm going to be taking profits on the altcoins. But for my Bitcoin position, I'll probably sell very small amounts of Bitcoin in the next run if it gets into those completely top out, those what I think are tops at the time. I'll use technical analysis to try and work out if the top has been put in and it's going to start trending down, and I'll sell a little bit of Bitcoin then. But for me, Bitcoin is a very long-term holding. It's my savings for my children, probably. So that's how I view my Bitcoin. It's my savings for my life and my life's energy, all saved into the Bitcoin network. So that's what I would be recommending in this cycle right now. I still think we're early. I still think the cycle has a long way to run. So yeah, you're not buying at the perfect time by any stretch of the imagination. It could drop 10, 20, 30% in the next few weeks. Who knows? No one knows. But I think over the next 6 to 18 months, I think you're buying at a very good time. So that's all I have to say for this video. If you enjoyed it, please smash the thumbs up button. I really hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Checking out from Tenerife, and I'll see you soon back in Ireland. Oh, sorry, the view's so crap. There we go.